What happens when a fearless political firebrand catches a talk show titan in a lie that could shatter her empire? The air in the grand ballroom of New York's Waldorf Astoria buzzed with clinking glasses and forced laughter. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over the elite, gathered for a charity gala to aid veterans. Karoline Leavitt, a rising conservative commentator with a razor-sharp tongue, stood near the bar, her navy gown clinging to her frame. Her eyes scanned the room, always hunting for a story. Then she heard it. A voice too familiar, dripping with arrogance. Ellen DeGeneres, in a tailored white suit, held court at a nearby table, her wife Portia at her side. Her words carried over the hum of the crowd. "I'm done with this country," Ellen said, swirling her wine. "The staff lawsuits, the whining, it's all nonsense. I've got a villa in Tuscany waiting. Let them chase me there." Her laugh was sharp, dismissive, as if the accusations of bullying her show's crew were a minor inconvenience. Portia nodded, but her smile faltered, uneasy. Karoline's grip tightened on her glass. She'd read the reports, the stories of Ellen's cruelty behind her TV grin, the toxic workplace she'd allegedly ruled with an iron fist. Now here was the queen of daytime TV, planning to flee the mess she'd made, leaving her accusers in the dust. Karoline's pulse quickened. She wasn't one to let a hypocrite slip away. She strode toward Ellen's table, heels clicking on the marble floor. The crowd parted, sensing trouble. "Ellen?" Karoline said, her voice loud enough to turn heads. "Running away already? I thought you were all about kindness." The words cut through the chatter, and a hush fell. Ellen's eyes narrowed, her smile frozen. "Excuse me," Ellen snapped, rising from her chair. "Who do you think you are?" Her tone was venomous, her face flushed with irritation. Portia tugged at her sleeve, but Ellen shook her off. Karoline stepped closer, undeterred. "I'm someone who knows a coward when I see one," she said. "You built your brand on being everyone's friend. But the second your staff calls you out, you're booking a flight to Italy? That's pathetic." Gasps rippled through the room. A waiter froze mid-step, tray wobbling. Ellen's jaw clenched. "You're out of your depth, sweetheart," she hissed. "This is none of your business. Stick to your little cable news rants." She waved a hand, as if swatting a fly, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of panic. The lawsuits were real, and the headlines were brutal. She couldn't afford this kind of scene. "It's everyone's business when you lie to millions," Karoline shot back. "You preached love while treating your crew like garbage. Now you're dodging accountability. Tell me, Ellen, how's that villa gonna feel when the truth follows you?" Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled with rage. She'd dreamed of moments like this, exposing frauds in front of the world. The crowd was riveted, phones discreetly recording. Ellen's face twisted with fury. "You're a nobody trying to make a name," she spat. "You think you can take me down? I've crushed bigger pests than you." She leaned in, her voice low and menacing. "Keep pushing, and I'll make sure you regret it." Karoline didn't flinch. "Threats? That's all you've got?" she said. "Run to Tuscany, Ellen. Hide. But you can't outrun what you've done." The room was silent, every eye on them. Ellen's chest heaved, her composure cracking. She grabbed her clutch, muttered something to Portia, and shoved through the crowd toward the exit, leaving a trail of stunned whispers. Karoline stood tall, heart pounding as the gala resumed its uneasy hum. She'd drawn first blood, but she knew Ellen wouldn't let this go. The talk show host had connections, power, and a vindictive streak. This was no longer just a confrontation. It was war, and Karoline was ready to fight. Could a single broadcast ignite a feud that burns through Hollywood's polished facade? Karoline Leavitt sat in the green room of a Manhattan news studio, her reflection staring back from a smudged mirror. The gala clash with Ellen DeGeneres replayed in her mind, each venomous word fueling her fire. She'd called out a titan, and the buzz was electric, but whispers of retaliation were already spreading. Her phone vibrated with alerts, tabloids claiming she'd lied about Ellen's staff scandals for clout. The lies bore Ellen's fingerprints, and Karoline's blood boiled. She wasn't just fighting for truth now, she was fighting for her name. The studio door swung open, and a producer ushered her to the set. The lights were harsh, the cameras unblinking. Across the country, in her sprawling LA mansion, Ellen lounged by a pool, her phone pressed to her ear. "Bury her," she told her publicist, her voice cold as steel. "Leak more stories. Say she's unhinged, desperate for attention." Portia, nearby, frowned but said nothing, her silence heavy. Ellen's team had already fed the press, painting Karoline as a fame-hungry opportunist. The headlines were vicious, and Ellen savored every one. On the studio set, Karoline faced the host, a seasoned journalist with a knack for stirring the pot. "Karoline, you accused Ellen DeGeneres of cowardice," he began, leaning forward. "Now her team says you made it all up. What's the truth?" The question was a trap, but Karoline was ready. She straightened, her eyes blazing. "The truth?" she said, her voice cutting through the studio's hum. "Ellen's running scared because her empire's built on lies. She bullied her staff, demeaned them, then planned to skip the country when they spoke out. I heard her admit it at the gala, bragging about her Tuscany escape. Now she's smearing me to save her skin." The audience murmured, gripped by her intensity. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket, a leaked email from a former Ellen show producer detailing the toxic workplace. "This proves it," she said, holding it up. "She's not a saint, she's a fraud." The broadcast went viral, clips flooding TV screens and radio waves. In LA, Ellen hurled her phone across the room, shattering a vase. "That little nobody," she snarled, pacing. "She thinks she can humiliate me?" Her team scrambled, but the email was real, and the public was turning. Ellen's charm, once bulletproof, was cracking under scrutiny. She glared at her publicist. "Find dirt on her, anything. I want her career in ashes by tomorrow." Karoline left the studio, her heart racing but her resolve ironclad. The email had been a gamble, a favor from a whistleblower who'd trusted her to expose Ellen. But the backlash was swift. Her inbox flooded with hate, orchestrated by Ellen's allies, calling her a liar, a troublemaker. Friends warned her to back off. Ellen's reach was long, and her wrath was relentless. Yet Karoline saw fear in Ellen's attacks, a desperation to silence her. She wasn't just a commentator now, she was a threat. As she stepped into the chilly New York night, her phone rang. An anonymous voice, low and urgent, promised more evidence, tapes of Ellen's rants against her staff. "Meet me tomorrow," the voice said, then hung up. Karoline's breath caught. This was her chance to bury Ellen for good, but the stakes were higher than ever. Ellen's next move would be ruthless, and Karoline knew she'd need every ounce of courage to face it. The war was escalating, and neither woman would yield. When does a secret meeting become the spark that lights a firestorm? Karoline Leavitt slipped into a greasy diner on the edge of Queens, her coat collar up against the late-night drizzle. The place smelled of burnt coffee and fries, its flickering, neon sign casting shadows on cracked vinyl booths. She scanned the room, her pulse hammering. The anonymous call had promised tapes, proof of Ellen DeGeneres' venomous outbursts. If real, they could end Ellen's reign. A man in a hooded jacket sat in the corner, his face half hidden. He nodded, and Karoline approached, every step heavy with risk. "You the one asking about Ellen?" he muttered, sliding a USB drive across the table. His voice was gruff, eyes darting to the door. "These are from her show's soundstage. She didn't know the mics were hot. Listen, then destroy it." Karoline's fingers closed around the drive, her throat tight. She handed him an envelope of cash, no questions asked. He was gone before she could blink, leaving her alone with the weight of what she held. In Los Angeles, Ellen paced her office, her face a mask of fury. Her team had traced Karoline's movements, a tip from a loyalist who'd spotted her leaving the studio. "She's got a source," Ellen snapped, slamming a fist on her desk. "Some traitor's feeding her lies. Find them now." Her publicist nodded, already dialing a private investigator. Ellen's empire was crumbling. Her staff's scandals splashed across every network. Karoline's broadcast had lit the fuse, and Ellen's paranoia was consuming her. She glared at a framed photo of her smiling on her talk show set. "You'll pay for this," she hissed, as if Karoline could hear her. Karoline plugged the USB into her laptop in her hotel room, headphones, on door bolted. The recordings were raw, Ellen's voice sharp and cruel, berating her crew. "You're worthless," she screamed in one clip. "I made you, and I can break you." Another captured her laughing about firing a pregnant assistant for requesting leave. Karoline's stomach churned, but her resolve hardened. This wasn't just a story, it was justice. She'd release the tapes at a press conference, let the world hear Ellen's true voice. But first, she needed a stage to ensure maximum impact. Ellen's investigator struck gold, a traffic cam catching Karoline entering the diner. She met someone, he told Ellen over the phone. "We're close to IDing him." Ellen's lips curled into a sneer. "Send a message," she ordered. "Scare her off. I want her running." That night, Karoline noticed a black sedan trailing. Her cab, its headlights too close. At a stoplight, a man in a dark coat stared through her window, his gaze cold. Her heart raced, but she refused to cower. Ellen's tactics were desperate, and Karoline saw weakness in them. She learned Ellen was attending a women's leadership summit in Chicago the next day, a perfect chance to strike. Karoline booked a flight, her mind racing with plans to confront Ellen publicly, tapes in hand. The sedan followed her to the airport, a silent threat. As she boarded, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Back off, or you'll lose more than your career." Karoline deleted it, her jaw set. Ellen thought fear would stop her, but she'd misjudged her enemy. The summit would be their battleground, and Karoline was ready to bring the war to Ellen's doorstep. How does a single voice shatter a legend's carefully crafted mask? Karoline Leavitt stepped into the Chicago Convention Center, her heels echoing on the polished floor. The Women's Leadership Summit buzzed with anticipation. Hundreds gathered to hear Ellen DeGeneres deliver a keynote on empowerment. Karoline clutched a small speaker in her bag, the USB drive with Ellen's toxic recordings burning a hole in her pocket. Her heart pounded, but her eyes were steady. She'd dodged Ellen's threats, the black sedan, the chilling texts. Today, she'd end this, no matter the cost. The auditorium was packed, the stage bathed in soft light. Ellen stood at the podium, her smile radiant, her white blazer crisp. "We lift each other up," she said, her voice smooth, practiced. The crowd applauded, charmed by the woman they thought they knew. Karoline, seated near the front, felt her stomach twist. Ellen's hypocrisy was suffocating, her words a mockery of the staff she'd crushed. Karoline stood, her movement drawing eyes. She raised the speaker, her thumb on the play button. "Ellen!" Karoline's voice boomed, cutting through the applause. Heads turned, murmurs rippling. Ellen froze, her smile faltering. "You talk about lifting people up, but what about the ones you tore down?" Karoline pressed play, and Ellen's recorded voice filled the room, vicious and unfiltered. "You're nothing without me. I'll fire you all." The crowd gasped, hands covering mouths. Another clip played, Ellen mocking a worker's plea for fair treatment. The room turned ice cold. Ellen's face drained of color. "Stop this!" she shouted, lunging toward the podium's mic. "She's lying. Those are fake." Her voice cracked, her poise unraveling. Karoline stepped forward, undaunted. "Fake?" she said, her tone sharp as a blade. "You screamed those words on your own set. You bullied your staff, then planned to flee to Europe to dodge the fallout. You're no leader, you're a fraud. The audience was on its feet, some shouting, others filming. Event organizers rushed the stage, trying to cut the sound, but Karoline held her ground, raising the speaker higher. "Listen to her," she demanded. "This is who she really is." Ellen's allies in the crowd yelled for security, but the damage was done. Whispers turned to boos, the room's mood shifting like a storm. A woman in the back stood, a former Ellen Show intern, and shouted, "She's telling the truth. Ellen humiliated me." Others joined, their voices a chorus of betrayal. Ellen's eyes darted, wild with panic. "You'll regret this," she hissed at Karoline, her finger jabbing the air. "I'll sue you into oblivion." But her threats sounded hollow, drowned by the crowd's rising anger. Karoline met her gaze, unflinching. "Sue me, Ellen. The truth's out, and you can't hide anymore." Ellen stumbled back, her blazer rumpled, her face a mask of rage and fear. She shoved past the organizers, fleeing down a side exit as the boos chased her. Karoline lowered the speaker, her breath ragged but her spirit soaring. The audience was divided, some stunned, others cheering her name. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. She'd humiliated Ellen on a stage meant to crown her, and the world was watching. As she left the stage, her phone buzzed with messages of support from viewers, from victims of Ellen's cruelty. But Karoline knew Ellen's venom wouldn't fade easily. The final blow was yet to come, and she'd be ready. What happens when a fallen star's final gamble meets an unstoppable truth? Karoline Leavitt stepped off the plane in New York, the city's skyline sharp against the dusk. The summit in Chicago had set the world ablaze, her name on every channel, her face in every headline. The tapes exposing Ellen DeGeneres' cruelty had sparked a firestorm, with former staffers coming forward, their stories tearing down Ellen's legacy. Karoline's inbox overflowed with gratitude, from workers she'd never met, from viewers who saw her as their voice. But she wasn't naive. Ellen's silence since fleeing the summit stage was too quiet, a predator circling before the strike. In a Manhattan penthouse, Ellen sat hunched over a glass of bourbon, her eyes bloodshot. The TV looped footage of the summit, Karoline's voice echoing like a taunt. Her team had failed to spin the narrative. Her sponsors were pulling out. Her show's future hung by a thread. "One last chance," she muttered, slamming the glass. "Down." Her publicist had secured a slot on a live TV special, a primetime tell-all where Karoline was a guest. Ellen would crash it, uninvited, and take back control. She'd paint Karoline as a liar, a vengeful opportunist. Failure wasn't an option. The studio was a fortress of lights and cables, the audience buzzing as Karoline took her seat. The host, a veteran broadcaster, leaned in. "Karoline, you've rocked Hollywood. Ellen's empire is crumbling. What's next?" Karoline's smile was tight, her senses sharp. "The truth doesn't stop," she said. Ellen ran from accountability, but it's caught her. The crowd cheered, their energy electric. Then the studio doors burst open and Ellen stormed in, her face a mask of defiance. Gasps filled the room. "You think you've won?" Ellen shouted, striding toward the stage. Security hesitated, cameras swiveling. "You're a fraud, Karoline. You twisted my words, faked those tapes." Her voice was shrill, her hands shaking. The audience booed, but Ellen pressed on, pointing at Karoline. "She's using you all, chasing fame on my back." Her desperation was raw, her charm gone. Karoline rose, her eyes locked on Ellen's. "Fame," Karoline said, her voice steady but laced with fire. "I'm here for the people you hurt, Ellen. The staff you screamed at, the lives you ruined. You can't lie your way out now." She pulled a tablet from her bag, swiping to a new file, a video from a whistleblower. It showed Ellen backstage, mocking a crying intern. Karoline hit play, and the screen behind her lit up. Ellen's cruel laughter filled the studio, undeniable. The crowd erupted, their boos deafening. Ellen's face crumpled, her bravado shattered. "That's not me!" she screamed, but her voice was drowned out. The host stepped in, his tone cold. "Ellen, the evidence is clear. Why should anyone believe you?" The audience roared agreement, their trust in Ellen gone. Karoline stepped closer, her voice low but piercing. "You called me a nobody, but I'm the one still standing. You're finished, Ellen. Go to Tuscany. No one here wants you." Ellen staggered, tears streaking her face. She looked to the crowd, searching for allies, but found only scorn. Security moved in, guiding her off the stage as she muttered threats, her voice breaking. The studio doors closed behind her and the audience cheered, chanting Karoline's name. She stood tall, her heart full. Ellen's empire was dust, her name a synonym for betrayal. Karoline had fought for the truth and won, not for fame, but for those who'd been silenced. As the cameras panned, she nodded to the crowd, their applause a victory she'd earned.